But unfortunately, the level of recognition only comes down to the ones who are topping in their board examination. So the parents pick the school accordingly, and the child who goes out of class 12th, you will see a marked difference. And the most development stages that are there are achieved when a child is in their schoolings. They have to be aware of what the society needs, and we can't never ever say that yes, the school has now understood what.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Welcome to One Young India.
Thank you.
We are a growing platform for lifelong learners. And we usually are talking to students and talking to them about what it means to constantly learn in 21st century. Now, I know that you've spent a considerable time of your career in the teaching profession.
Yes.
And right now you're leading a school here in Delhi. It's called Modern Convent.
Right.
And your journey as a teacher and right now as somebody who's looking at the management of the school has sort of intrigued me, because you also come from a background where you've been a badminton player, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
And you've also done your master's and your bachelor's in biotechnology. And
Yes.
so very interesting fields, considering it's in news more often than not these days. Holds a lot of importance for the fourth industrial and the fifth industrial revolution. So in this conversation, ma'am, we'd be talking to you about what it means to be an educator in India. What changes would you recommend in the Indian education system? Because we all know that there are certain flaws that still exist. What advice would you give to young students, to teachers? And in general, have a conversation about what it means to be a learner today in 21st century. Why should students be curious? What is going to be your advice on that?
Right.
So welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So to start with, I'd like to first know why this career in teaching and how did you go about it? Right? What was your objective? Was this always something that you always wanted to do, or something inspired you to go this way?
Oh, honestly speaking, when I chose to do biotechnology, of course, teaching was not something which was up my mind. But as life progressed further, I got this opportunity. And I was really glad to know that we can introduce a subject like this to young children of classes 11th and 12th also. So I grabbed that opportunity, and when I started teaching them, the love for this field and the love to gain and put knowledge into these children for a field which they were unknown to really grew and caught up to me, and then things went up from there.
Wow. When you think your life has become a little hectic since being a teacher to now managing an entire institution, an entire school.
Right. Of course, things are a little crazy sometimes, but then that's the fun of it, right? When you are at it at all times. And after COVID, with coming in of technology, the misconception that was there, that teaching is a job which involves only from 8 to 2 or 8 to 3. It is now a 24-hour job. But then when you love something, when you really are passionate about something, it doesn't bother you much.
Oh yeah, I can obviously relate to that.
Right.
Because there are times when, I have seen my teachers get up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and taking classes, and that too without missing a day,
And see, one very, very major thing about teaching in school is that you remain young forever.
Yeah. Well, I think there's this very famous quote. I'm not sure whether this was by Einstein or Henry Ford. He said that anyone who stops learning, whether at 20 or 80, is old. And anyone who keeps on learning is young.
That is very true.
And I think that's probably the reason why we call our organization One Young India, where, anyone who's constantly willing to learn,
Right.
What we call, or like to define as learnacy
Right.
today, is consistently considered young.
Of course.
So you mentioned that, teaching is that sort of a profession which requires 24 hours right now.
Right.
And a lot of changes have happened with respect to technology right now. And again, COVID was that one push that sort of happened. We didn't have it in our hands. We had to play the hand that was given to us. What-
I'll say COVID changed the monotony in education.
Okay, so you think
We
that
had
there-
reached a plateau, and now we reached we got a threshold, and it has gone a notch up.
All right. But now, while there are obviously positives for it, there are obviously, certain negative annotations also related to all this entire shift to online education.
Right.
I'd like to know your opinions on that.
See, as of right now, the education that is happening is totally offline. But yes, during online education, the personal connect with the teachers had with the children, we were not able to make that. So when the children came back to us, they did not know or recognize, or they were not on a personal level with the teachers. So we had to initially make that connect. Even now, when online teaching goes about, children are somehow preferring to go for YouTube videos and other platforms, which really doesn't work very well.
Interesting that you bring up YouTube videos. So we see that there has been sort of a politicization of the Indian education world when it specifically comes to YouTube. There are edtech startups who are poaching teachers.
Right.
Right. Did you feel that this sort of has a negative impact on how a student now looks up at a teacher? Like, what is their perception and image of it? Do you think that has translated into certain sort of disrespect for the profession?
See, actually, whenever teaching is concerned, there was always a percentage of content and drama in it. But with these platforms coming up, unfortunately, the percentage of drama is going up and the percentage of content is coming down. So, and the children nowadays are somehow getting attracted to that more, the limelight, the spotlight, and the dramatization of how the pedagogies are being changed. So yes, the content is going down, and of course, children are always looking for something which is more interesting. But somewhere down the line, we have to understand that education, while our pedagogies do not need to be interesting and funny. So children are going towards more of videos which are entertaining them, but the content is very less.
All right. But again, that YouTube also happens to be a fantastic learning platform. So there are people like Johnny Harris, Cleo Abraham, right? Vox and Vice News. I think it's a question of choosing.
Right. But then that's why we call them children, right? Right now they don't have the right kind of mindset to know what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
And even in that also, if they follow what the teachers are guiding them through and the links that the teacher are sending, so they don't find them interesting enough, if I can go around like this.
So that interesting, you see, is coming out of drama, the dramatization of the entire thing. That also brings me to another question, which is with respect to social media.
Right.
So kids these days have all sorts of aspirations. A striking number of kids today want to be social media influencers.
Yes.
Every maybe fifth person in India right now, in the urban areas at least, sort of considers themselves a content creator. And it is changing. It has sort of changed the Indian economy as well. And again, I think there was a survey which said that YouTube has added more jobs than certain startups combined.
Right.
But that said, what kind of ambitions and what kind of aspirations do you think it sets up for young people who are vulnerable, who do not have a very enriched digital footprint? They don't understand how the world works, but then they're so focused and they are already sometimes adamant, if I may say, that, this is the only thing that we want to do now.
Right.
So what is your opinion on pursuing a career in content creation?
See, of course, this is a big worry for everybody. Children are getting very short-sighted nowadays. All they see is, that one shot to fame. But unfortunately, what is portrayed to them is only the fame and not what went behind that. So I firmly believe that whoever, even the influencers who are doing good, I'm sure they must have struggled. They must have got their content by hard work and looking around. So if they come up and they show this aspect also, so I'm sure the children would really recognize it. See, of course, this is the in thing right now. So we don't want to discourage the children, but we want to make the children aware that it is not that easy as it seems to be.
Yeah. So I mean, you feel that there is always that necessity to make sure that they go through a regimented life routine.
See, when we talk about schooling and education, what it is about is about guiding the children rather than just telling the children to say no. And even as educators, we need to change ourselves. We need to see what the children want and what they aspire to be. So rather than just going and putting a foot down, it is better to make them realize, have workshops. You know, we recently were planning to have a workshop in our school about how to be an influencer. So have and make the children aware, and I'm sure they'll understand that there's more to it.
Interesting. So you think that the role of schools has also changed significantly, considering right now there are changes happening in the Indian education system as well, and maybe we talk about that in in certain time. But the role of schools has to change accordingly also, I feel, because there are a number of online schools that are coming up today. Homeschooling is sort of becoming popular.
Right.
Where do you think schools are today, and what do you think the schools should do to stay relevant?
They have to be aware of what the society needs, and we can't never ever say that yes, the school has now understood what is required, because the meaning of what children want, what the stakeholders want, or what they need is changing on a daily basis. One day you're reading something and you know that this is going to impact our next generation. The next day you have certain set of news pieces again. So the thing is that whoever are the educators and whoever are there at the management level should themselves be aware of what is happening around and make the changes accordingly. Plus, there is a very dire need for educators and managers to understand that what change is going to be a long-term change and what is going to be a short-lived change. So we have to be at our heels at all the time.
All right. Now, I have always believed that, an educational institution, school, for example, I graduated from BITS Pilani. We never had a attendance policy per se, but then that place shaped my way of thinking. It gave me my friends. It changed my outlook towards life. So in that way, I truly believe that institutions do play a very important role.
Right.
How do you see schools bringing that sort of, I'm sure that there must be students right now who are visiting back and, they relate to their school days and how it transformed them, changed them. How do you think that sort of accentuates and stays with the personality of the person as they go and progress in their career?
Actually, in school, a child spends the maximum number of years, and the most development stages that are there are achieved when a child is in their schoolings. They'll change friends, their personality changes after every 2 to 3 years. So obviously there is a sentimentality which remains with the children. And here it is very important that whatever is the value system of the school should be remaining the same and should be in cognizance with the group that they are catering to. So obviously they make a bond with the teachers, they make a bond with the environment. And, unfortunately with 2 years of COVID, this bond was lost a little. But the way it is coming back is very heartening also.
So am I right in assuming that school is a place for social learning, emotional learning first?
Exactly.
And then it also helps in the technical education.
Of course, and that is, as I said, exactly what was lost in these 2 years. We gave them academic learning, but the social interactions, the emotional question, that was all lost. So when we have children coming here after 2 years, they don't even know how to communicate socially with each other. So even now, they are knowing how to adjust, how to be patient, and how to talk to other people around or behave themselves around in a society, which is very important, which they had lost in these 2 years. So of course, when it comes to schooling, a very, very major part is how to interact. Like we have schools for girls and we have schools for boys, and then we have the co-ed schools. So the parents pick the school accordingly, and the child who goes out of class 12th, you will see a marked difference between these two.
So there is a personality stamp of sorts that, it leaves on you, an impression.
Your personality is developed while you are in school.
Yeah.
So obviously it will.
So, ma'am, I have something that I've been meaning to ask you. You come from, so you've played badminton, right?
Yes.
You've you understand that sports are an integral part of
Yes.
development. What do you think we are lacking when it comes to the Indian education system? For example, in US, sports athletes are given a lot of support.
Right.
Although we do have sports quota admissions here as well, but then there is definitely that gap. What is your opinion on that? What can we do about it?
Yeah, there are many children, and I'll say not just sports. There are many children who are performing amazingly well culturally. There are children who are going up to state level and getting positions, first position, second position. But unfortunately, the level of recognition only comes down to the ones who are topping in their board examination. So unless and until this system changes, so the school unfortunately cannot do anything internally. We have to follow a system. If we are CBSE school, we have to follow a CBSE system. But now with the new education policy, there is definitely hope that these children will get their dues in the areas that they are excelling in.
All right. So that I think that was supposed to be something that we wanted to talk to you about and take your opinion about the new education policy.
Right.
So I think usually in India, there was a period of policy paralysis. And before this, the education policy, the last came was in 2000. Yeah. So this was obviously a much needed push, a change. How far do you think has it been into the policy recommendations? Have we been able to apply most of the recommendations in the school networks and the entire education system per se?
See, the policy is out, but the implementation stages are still in. So I don't think anybody should be, or I would be able to comment on it till the time I see at least 1 or 2 sessions pass by with this policy. But yes, when we look at it on paper, when we hear about it, and when we hear about how CBSE and the government is going about and how enthusiastic they are for these changes, that there is a lot of hope. But unless and until things are implemented, we really can't comment on it. But yes, this policy is looking very fresh, and it looks like it is going to give a holistic approach to education.
Because it talks about vocation, it talks about
Yes.
emotional understanding, and in fact, schools. I think my schooling played a very significant role in my development. But then there are also instances which may not leave a very positive mark. So increasingly right now there is cyberbullying, but then there is also cases of bullying.
Right.
How do you think schools, the administration, the teachers should be addressing them? Because I feel that still sort of happens. Although we have frameworks in place,
Right.
what is your take on that?
See, the what we have seen and noticed is that it can only be stopped if there is a good, healthy communication channel between the children and the teachers. If any child is free enough to come and express themselves to the teachers, so these things we cannot expect, 100% environment where we'll say that yes, my school has no bullying and no cyberbullying at all. But we need to have an environment where we need to keep these things in place and in check. So one very, very important thing is the communication channel should always be open between the teacher and the student so that they can come and express and it can be stopped before it goes a very wrong way.
All right. One more pressing issue in the schooling system has been that of gender neutrality. In fact, if you look at certain initiatives by the government of India built a lot of toilets in a lot of government, the girl toilets, right? In a lot of government schools so that there is access to education for girls who are not going to school because of sanitary issues. Although in private schools, we do have those sort of facilities. We have accessibility when it comes to, let's say, somebody who is physically handicapped. So there are obviously facilities available. But still, there is that entire social narrative in India where our Prime Minister had to launch something called as a Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. Do you think that we as Indian schools have reached a place, at least private Indian schools in urban cities have reached a place where we can call them gender neutral places?
Of course we have. Right now I have more number of girls coming in for nursery admissions rather than boys.
Wow.
Yes, the ratio is different when it comes to senior classes. But as we go down, there are more number of girls. And I think one of the reasons is not, when it comes to private schools, it's not about people coming to seek admission or not coming to seek admission. It is more how the society is now accepting girl child. So of course, in a place like Dwarka and Delhi, I don't think that's a major issue right now. Maybe in some suburbs it might be, but not here.
This. So there's something very interesting observation that I've had, that in India, students typically have an aspiration to join a government college, right?
Okay.
You talk about IITs, you talk about IIMs,
Right.
right? So even the kids who are coming from the most privileged backgrounds, they have an aspiration that we're going to join the best institution in the country,
Right.
which till date at least happens to be supported by the government as a government entity. But there is a striking contrast when it comes to the schooling system,
Right.
in terms of the quality of education. Yes, barring maybe few government schools like Kendriya Vidyalayas.
We have the School of Excellence which are coming up now.
So why do you think, is it only because of quality, or is it a behavioral sort of a shift within the Indian parents' mindset?
That's what their preference is right now. Unfortunately, I don't think I would like to comment on the conditions of the private schools or the government schools. It's a big political issue. I don't want to comment on it much. So it is the parents' choice and it is the parents' mindset. Maybe in other countries, we have a concept wherein there's a public school and a private school. So I think the moment we call them as government schools, there is an innovation which comes in the mind of the parents which are there. But one shift that I've seen is with the Delhi government coming up with School of Excellence, there are children who are actually shifting from private schools to these schools, but very less in number.
Interesting. So, okay. Now, there is something that I'm going to take a little bit of a shift and we'll go a bit towards technology. Okay. Just before we start for this conversation, we were discussing about artificial intelligence.
Right.
Where do you see artificial intelligence disrupting the Indian education system?
Well, it already has. You showed me something very new. So yes, of course, technology has both its pros and cons. And the minute the children get to know that what is the wider area and scope for this technology and how much of it they can access, it is definitely going to bring the learning levels down. The skill of children where they were thinking, the whole thought process will now be hampered with this, I really feel, because they'll have access to each and every thing rather than thinking and coming out with answers. They would be searching for answers, which is going to be much easier with AI. So yes, it is a very, very concerning situation for us. But then let's see how life is very unpredictable. Let's see how the children actually use it for their advantage or the disadvantage.
Interesting. Ma'am, the accessibility of phones. So I remember I got my first phone when I had passed my high school. So when I was due to go to college. And again,
you're lucky I got mine in masters.
Wow, again, I think there is that window is always consistently.
There is no net in, no net in it, and it was all only calling. That's it.
But right now, I see that there are 10-year-olds, 8-year-olds who are demanding, I need my own personal phone. And while I understand that you cannot let the child be completely disconnected and say that no, technology does not exist, they need to be able to communicate with it, interact with it. But it's taking that sort of a turn where I feel that parents sometimes have to be the bad guy, where they have to confiscate phones or they ask teachers to do that. Where do you see that students are coming from, right? What is this that's going on in their mind? Because I'm sure that you had these experiences.
Right.
So what do you think goes into a student's mind when their privilege, their technological access is taken away, when parents feel that, no, they should not be spending less time there? And how do you ensure that?
See, there are many, many parents who come to me with this concern, and my only answer to them is stop using the phone yourself.
Okay.
Why do we have, if you know that you have a child who is, accessing technology a little too much for your comfort, and what is it ultimately doing to the children? It is actually lowering down their concentration levels. We used to study, then we used to go outside and play and come back during our break times and then study. But what are children doing? They are going online, they're studying online, and this is really, really drastically decreasing their concentration capacities. So yes, it is very, very worrying. But whenever a parent comes to me and says that my child is on phone, I ask them, why don't you stop your phone first? Why don't you get a basic calling phone? So yes, it is difficult in these times. Parents have to do their work. You have to be on medias like WhatsApp and Facebooks and Instagram. Even we as a school have our Facebook and Instagrams in place. But then if you do not want your child to access it, we have to stop accessing it ourselves. And of course, the children also have a lot of peer pressure and social pressure going on. So even if I, as a parent, do not want to give my child phone, he will go to school, and after 2 days, he'll be very disappointed, and he'll come back and he'll tell me that everybody has one and I don't have one. We as schools are also sending assignments online. But now this conscious decision was made by us that we will minimize it on platforms like WhatsApp, and we will only stick to the ERP which the children and the parents should be accessing to the desktop. So yes, we need to seriously think. So only the child is not to blame. It's everybody, coming from the parents to school, the society. Things have to change in overall. Let's not blame the children only for it.
Yeah, because I see it as something where I've seen children revolt.
Yes, of course. Of course.
You know what?
This is what is addictive to it. No?
Yeah.
This is what is what they are addicted to all of a sudden. This is what is addiction about. You take that from them and they revolt. So you need to recognize to what level your child has gone. Is your child able to switch off that phone and keep it aside? If they are, then give them access. If they are not, then you yourself first start getting away from technology.
No, that's very interesting. And this is where I feel that there is a need to also educate students about managing media.
Yes.
Right? I feel that there has to be a section where they need to be told that, there is a limit to the number of hours you can spend on your screen. And then there is the sort of content that you are consuming. So there is definitely, there is that digital footprint, which is not mature enough for students, specifically in middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. They are motivated by things that they see online, and not every time is it healthy for them.
Right.
Do you think that the culture in the school, because of the sort of consumption, because right now a student here in India has access to all sorts of content.
Right.
Their aspirations as a student, as their career, and about the economy and their privileges is all very global.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I'm sure, has some impact on the school culture.
Right.
Do you see that sort of an Americanization, westernization of the school culture that has taken place?
Of course. There are lots and lots of changes in how these children are perceiving things, how they are talking to each other, how they are behaving. So, actually they are a confused lot now. It is not just about Americanization or you're taking anything from any particular country. Now they're confused because they are getting inputs from everywhere and they don't know that how exactly they have to go about. And I believe, and we keep on constantly telling the children this only, that stick to your own culture, so that you're not confused. These children have not formed any notions inside their heads as to what exactly is the path they have to follow now. So here the school's own culture, when it comes, the culture of the staff, how we communicate with them, what kind of information we give them apart from education. One of the main reasons, because of this, we have started value education classes in a big way with Ramakrishna Mission. They are coming and they are, holding classes for our teachers, training our teachers, and our teachers are taking these modules where they are training the children to think in a manner which is better for them. So these are not classes wherein children are told you do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they are given situations and they are told what you should be doing. So herein, when you talk about cultural changes, I'd say there are no changes. The children are just confused. So we need to direct them and divert them that what is the right way. And of course, it also goes in synchronization with their families back at end. So now we cannot go, if there are 40 children in a class, we cannot say that we are going to teach them. We have to recognize which families and what values they are coming from and then put it forth for them.
All right. And when it comes to the aspiration of children and parents, sometimes I feel that they're misplaced. I come across a lot of parents who see and typically have this question: which institute gives the best package, right? Which profession can I earn the most?
Right.
That sort of distorts the entire advice that one is even looking for, because you've already have a certain aspiration, certain frame of thinking which with you coming from. What is your opinion about that? Should we be able, I think that needs to be changed. What can we as educators, as learners, constant learners, can do to ensure that this sort of a behavioral change is not, it does not become normal?
See, yes, you're absolutely right. Nowadays, whenever we have our career counseling, children do stand up and ask that which is the career which is going to give me the maximum amount of money. So we do try to tell them that you first recognize what you want to do and be passionate about what you want to do, and things will roll on from there. So one thing that I've realized after COVID, of course, is that we should be giving them exposure to all the professions, calling in professionalists from various fields and letting them talk to them, so that they find their own passion and they find their own way. And then I think after a certain time, they would want to stop talking about money.
Yeah, because I think that money follows. Like if
Money, yes, of course. See, you have to maintain quality and money will follow. So this is something we are constantly trying to tell them. As I said, nowadays are not the times when we go ahead and tell the children that, no, you have to do this. We have to now only give them a path and wait and see which path are they actually going on, the one that we are thinking for them. And if they are not, then we can't say that, yes, they are wrong and we are right. Because there are many times when people and children have turned and proved to be, right in their own ways of thinking. So we also have to be a judge at every point of time and see the capacity of the child accordingly.
All right. So when it comes to, for example, we mentioned financial literacy also.
Right.
Therefore, plays a very important role.
Absolutely.
No doubts, it should be a part of the curricula, if not the standardized curricula, the parallel curricula. But at that same point, there are right now students and parents, at least I have come across, who face financial losses because they or their board thought that they are ready to trade in the markets with the crypto craze right now.
Right.
With n number of social influencers, financial influencers giving advice. Right. How do you think we should be able to tackle that for students at an early age?
See, I say tell them to do it virtually. Again, as I've been repeatedly saying, this is not the times when we tell the child, no, you can't do it. Let them do it virtually for a year or so, and they'll know themselves.
Ma'am, I think when it comes to the Indian education system, it has definitely changed. Obviously, in the last 70 years and in the last 15 years and so on and so forth. But I don't think so. It has still changed at the pace that it should have. What advice, if I were to say, what recommendations, and considering as somebody, and let's consider ourselves agnostic to the entire education system right now, what advice do you think, what recommendations would you have for the Indian education system over and above the new education policy?
See, as I said, it is the school head and the school management which have to recognize the changes that are happening on a day-to-day basis, and to see that and to judge which are the changes which are going to stay there and which are the changes which are going to be temporary. Like, I'll give you a small example. When COVID came, it was only actually for 1.5 and 2 years. So as educators, we were expecting and we thought that this is a change which is going to be short-lived. So we have to act accordingly. And that worked for us. So to recognize the changes that are going to be there for a longer term, like for example, when you talk about cultural diversity, I, as a principal, do not think that is going to be there for long. And after a matter of 1 or 2 years, families and children will recognize that we'll have to come back to the original Indian value system. So right now, the strategy is not to change the ethos of the school and westernize it, but to keep on pitching in the Indian values that are there in the children, so that down the line, when they recognize this, they have a blend of both the value system in them, and then they choose accordingly.
All right. But ma'am, how motivated do you think are teachers as of now when it comes to profession that they are in? I know because sometimes it's very hard for teachers
of
because
course.
they are not only involved in teaching, they're involved in a lot of administration task work as well. But at the same time, the world around them is constantly changing and kids have access to information, the data, and there are bound to be questions that do not fall into the purview
Right.
of what it means to be or what it used to mean to be a school teacher.
Right.
How do you think that teachers should cope up?
See, one thing I'll also add up to is a teacher is also a mother, a wife, and a daughter and a daughter-in-law at home. So that also comes with a heavy amount of baggage. So right now, one very important thing that we, as a principal, I'm concentrating is on the mental health of the teachers, to have yoga sessions for them regularly, to have counseling sessions for them regularly. Even we have financial literacy sessions for them. So it is very important the teachers are in the best of health, mental health, physical health, and in the best of peacefulness in themselves. So once they are there, so everything is achievable for them.
All right. One last question before we, part and maybe take a few more opinions from you is how does one become a teacher? Because from what I understand in India, in the formal schooling setup, you have to have completed bachelor in education.
Yes.
Otherwise, you're not eligible to become a school teacher per se in the,
Right.
formal network. Do you think that's sort of a barrier when it comes to having people who are good at teaching but do not want to go through the entire process of going through a B.Ed once again?
No, I firmly feel that if somebody is coming into the field of teaching, degrees like B.Ed when it comes to classes first and above, and degrees like entities when it comes to preschooling, which are very, very important classes, are essential because they teach you the correct kind of pedagogies. So, in fact, we have seen teachers who have come for interviews without B.Eds and without their essential degrees, and there is a marked difference. Maybe not when we are interacting with them, maybe not when they're giving a written paper. They're probably content-wise, they're very good. But when it comes to classroom teaching, any teacher who has done her B.Ed and professional degrees, definitely it makes a lot of difference.
Because they've spent considerable time
They have
knowing
been
how to
trained.
interact
They,
with the
they have been
students.
trained accordingly.
Yeah, because we see that anyone can be a teacher. And and everyone you do meet obviously knows something that you don't. And in that case, yes, everyone is a teacher. But then the role of a formal teacher has changed
Yes.
extensively when it comes to, specifically with YouTube right now.
Right.
The ethics have gone out of the window and
See, a teacher has to be multifaceted. She has to be content-wise. She needs to know her subject. She needs to be technologically up there. And at the same time, she needs to have a lot of patience. She needs to be somebody who should be aware about what is happening in the world. She needs to know child psychology. So a teacher has to have multiple number of talents and skills. So being a teacher is not an easy job anymore.
So, ma'am, if somebody were to look at teaching as a career, as a profession, what do you think should motivate them? Because I hear this complaint typically even in the US setup, where teachers are often complaining that we're not being paid enough for the sort of work that we do.
Right.
What do you expect us to do? So there is this sort of a movement where a lot of teachers are leaving the formal network. But if somebody still wants to be, I feel, at least that's my personal opinion, that certain people in an economy need to be the highest paid professionals.
Yes.
So do you think that teaching falls in that profession? And if yes, what sort of advice would you give to people who are aspiring to be teachers and, at the same time looking at financial security, following a career where they want to excel, they want to grow, and, let it not be a career which is typically chosen in India by a certain gender or only a certain age group for a certain period of their life?
See, yes, whatever you said is the harsh truth. And let me tell you, this is not going to change for ages ago. So this is going to remain same. Yes, of course. When it comes to the pay scales, there is much that is to be warranted for the teaching side. And that is maybe one of not the most motivating factor when somebody enters this profession. But the love for children, they need to have that. And there are many young girls who are coming into this profession to be with young children. In a recently conducted interview, there was one young girl who told me that, ma'am, I want to remain young and I want to be with the children. I do not care about the money. So it all depends on what kind of financial, background you're coming from. What are your needs? So we have a variety of teachers. We have teachers who are coming here to make sure that they're not just housewives. Let me nip it in the bud. Then we have teachers who are coming here who are making livelihood out of teaching. And let me tell you, it is not that bad as it seems to be. So this is one profession that apart from financial security, you're also getting to be with children and you're also learning every day.
Yeah, that keeps you young.
That keeps you young.
Wow, great.
And the joy when you stand and people come to you and said, ma'am, we were your student. And when you see them succeed, that has another level of satisfaction.
And I feel that there is always this bond where, sometimes, because हमारे साथ में तो class में this used to happen a lot, that sometimes one of these kids would stand up and गलती से मुंह से निकल जाता था मम्मा.
Right.
Right? Where teacher has that.
Now then we also say हमारे बच्चे.
हाँ.
So people get confused. Just what bachas are you talking about? Which ones?
Exactly. So ma'am, just one last advice that you would want to give to students today across India when it comes to constantly learning and upgrading themselves. What should they be doing? How they should approach this entire new wild world that they are entering into, which is full of AI, which is full of technologies where we're talking about nuclear fusion, we're talking about a connected world. Biotechnology is again taking leaps and bounds. What advice would you give to students?
See, I would like to tell the children that, there is a quote in a very famous Charles Dickens novel that these are the best of times and these are the worst of times. So you have the best of information in front of you and you also have the worst of information in front of you. What you choose is ultimately what you become. So be wise. That's it.
Yeah. So it's like saying what you eat, you become.
Absolutely.
So
what you sow is what you
consuming.
eat. Right.
Yes. Wow. Nicely put, ma'am.
Right.
So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
We would hope that we are able to contribute in our own capacity to the development of the Indian education system. And support from people like you who are having a direct impact into the Indian formal education system means a lot.
Thank you.
So thankful for you for sharing your insights and your thoughts. So I think that would be it, Abhinav.
And I think you people are doing an amazing job. This is an amazing concept which is really required at this point of time. Very refreshing.
Thank you so much.
All the best to you and your organization.
Thank you so much, ma'am.